Hello and welcome to this week's edition of How to Improve Your Grade the 1% Way. My name is Dave Foster, MA, and if you don't know who I am, then look at previous videos, look on the website, Driver Training Education, etc. We're doing this series building up on basically how to pass your Part 3 test or improve your grade step by step. A lot of people try to do it all in one hit. You can't do it in one hit. So what we're looking for is each week a video which will look at one aspect of one of the standards, how you can improve just a little bit. And then overall, if you improve by just 1 point on every single standard, you're going to be sort of 16, 17 points ahead. So let's look at this one. And today we're looking at, did the trainer ensure that the pupil fully understood the responsibility for the risk would be shared? Well, first of all, what is sharing the risk? Or what is a risk? Well, it sounds like an obvious question, but it's really a fault or a danger that could happen when associated with anything to do with driving. And I'd probably go a bit further really, because for a pupil is from literally when they leave their front door to when they get back. For us, we're responsible for them there. But also they're responsible for getting into the vehicle safely, the cockpit, the legal requirements, the insurance, etc. So they're responsible for understanding all of this. And it's also anything covered, as it says, in the DVSA's Learning to Drive standards. So it is a risk anywhere. So everything is an opportunity for us to share the risk. Some people say and talk about the 3 S's. The 3 S's of recovery, never let anybody speed, swear, or swerve. Or swear, speed, swerve, or swear. Did the trainer ensure? Okay, you need to explain that risk will be shared at the beginning of every lesson and continually throughout the lesson. At the beginning of each lesson, you need to explain how the risk will be shared, and how we do this, it would be depending on each pupil. Each pupil, every lesson is different, so there is no one size fits all, although there is a general guideline, but it's no size fits all. But we do need to. For example, you might mention to a beginner that we have dual controls and that you could take over if necessary. But you wouldn't want to be doing that with a more experienced pupil. There's a common misconception around social media websites when people say you must tell the pupil that you have dual controls. This came about because probably in one standards check that somebody had failed, an examiner talked about sharing the risk, the instructor did not know what it meant, and the examiner gave an example of, for example, you could have told the pupil that you had dual controls, etc. Because in that situation and that day with that pupil, that was probably a very good example to be used. But you wouldn't be doing it with maybe other learners. You need to approach, this approach with every different learner, etc. So now you might explain to the approach today we're going to look at is the responsibility of the learner, but you will initially support the emerge. As another example, you might say that is what we're going to do today. And there's lots and lots of different examples. And I say the variations are limitless. Only you and your learner will truly know on the day. And the best strategy is often to just ask your learner, what would you like to take responsibility of today? What would you like to take responsibility for this session? What would you like me to take responsibility for? But remembering you're going to share that responsibility. In my background in teaching, we talk about the transfer of learning, which to me is the shared responsibility. I am transferring what I know onto my learner. But don't be afraid to change the amount of responsibility or the support that you're giving to the learner. But we need to look at this as a continued shared responsibility for the lesson. I'm going to give you one example, and again, there are limitless examples to this. But for example, a pupil asks you the question, do I need to signal here? Now, humankind, our nature really just wants us to help the learner, and we tend to just jump in and tell them, yes, you need to signal here. What is the speed limit here? It's 30. what do I need to hear here? And we just tell them because we feel that we're helping them and we feel that we're being paid to help them. But we have to try and resist that, because what is the learner really learning if we just tell them the answer? Well, very little, in fact. They will just learn in that example of to signal there at that place at that time, which might be different another day, might be different on another junction. So we're not sharing the responsibility with the learner. In fact, we're taking it away. Learners are very, very good at making you do all the work for them. You know, for their teenage years, they got used to it, you know, getting mum and dad, getting the teacher to do the work, whereas we've got to do the work for them. They've got to do some of the work themselves. So let's try the same thing. Let's try sharing approach. So again, same thing. Do I need a signal here? Let's try. Maybe you can ask. Let's look at this one. What does the highway code say about signals? Where could you find this information? And start asking questions. Oh, and when it says, would another benefit? Would this not confuse? So let's talk about it. Let's get them asking, would anybody benefit? Would it confuse? And so on. So get them discussing what the rules are. Now in this example, the learner learns how to apply the rules for signals at every junction on each case going on. They're learning to become thinking drivers, and this is really important. We are creating thinking drivers, not robots. And thinking drivers become good drivers, drivers who can apply the rules themselves to other situations. That's one example. During the lesson, these examples are going to happen all the time, etc. You've got to resist the urge to tell them. What is the risk here? It's a very good question. So in any situation, when they're going to be doing something, if they're going to pull out, they're not checking their mirrors, don't tell them, check your left mirror. I've told you. Ask them, what are the risks? What could happen if you don't check your mirrors? What are the risks? But often they'll give us one answer and that's it. But the very, very best coaching question in the world, undeniably, is, and what else? So what would happen if you didn't check your mirrors? Oh, I may hit a cyclist. And what else? What else is given in many coaching books as being the biggest and best coaching question of the world. And what else? And when you've asked them what else, the next question could be, and what else? What else could be at risk? What else could happen? And what else could happen? And when you feel that you're exhausting it, and you know, you come to a 2 or 3 and you're happy, ask them the question, and is there anything else? Which almost gives that get out of being able to say, well, no, I think that's enough. And you know, you decide when it's enough, etc. But I've really got to get that importance of sharing the risk. It's not just a simple cursory, what is the risk here? Oh, I might hit a motorcyclist. Yeah, etc, etc. And don't start giving them your risks. They might say, I might hit a motorcyclist, which is perfectly valid. If you're thinking, oh, but what about a child? Don't necessarily give it to them. You know, that's your version. The motorcycle was fine, but and what else? And what else? As long as they're giving you good examples, then accept them. But you must fight with every inch of your body and your desire to just tell them, okay, that's not sharing the risk. Let me get clear. I'm not saying never ever tell them. Okay, there are occasions when you might need to tell them, but you're trying not to at first. You need them to come up with an example. There's always what I've always referred to as mission critical. When I studied coaching in a situation, we were talking about the 7 stages of coaching. Number 1 all the way to number 7. And number 1 was pure coaching. You know, you were not going to tell them if hell froze over. But mission critical, number 7 was the end, was, well, in our case, you know, this is when there's pupils heading towards that brick wall or some other immediate danger. You know, now is not the time to ask them, how do you think it's going to feel in a moment when we've hit the wall? You know, now is time to take action and stop and tell or take risk. Ideally, we've got there before there, we've been proactive, and we've got there before they're heading towards a brick wall. But there's always those occasions where things happen, and then obviously coaching goes out the window, so to speak, and you tell them. Now, when I say coaching goes out the window, telling is a form of coaching, but it is sort of, if you consider it is 7, you're never telling them. So number 1, you're never telling them. 7 is you're telling them. You know, it is a level which is used sometimes. So this is your week's 1% challenge for how you can increase your grade. Okay, write this down, do it. How are you going to do it? Start by agreeing at the beginning of every lesson this week. Start by agreeing the shared responsibility at the beginning. Think about your learner. What help would they need? What are they going to do? What are you going to do? And agree it. If you're using the GROW model, which I hope you all are, or something similar, then it will form part of the GROW model with your goals, etc., and you will be sharing that responsibility. Stop telling them and start asking them more questions. Fight with your body everything you can to stop telling them. It's not easy at first, particularly if you've been doing it for many years, okay, but you will get there. Gradually it will come, and eventually you get better, and eventually it becomes instinctive, and then see what you and your pupils will see, or they will start seeing the difference, etc. It actually becomes an easier way of teaching. You won't feel like you're just saying, oh, I've told them about the mirrors, again I've got to tell them, again I've got to tell them, you know, etc., etc. Oh, you know, your job becomes a better job, it becomes more interesting, it becomes more rewarding. Now, okay, that's your homework for this week, and I hope that many of you will do it. On Friday I will publish something again in the notes and ask people how they've got on. It would be good to get some feedback, but at this point, otherwise, now if you want to go off and do practice, you can. If you don't want me to hear a plug a product that can help you, then by all means go, but I'm just going to talk about one of my products briefly. We produce many products to help the driving instructor training based on the DVSA facts, not the myths and fables that come from Facebook. One of the ones that particularly can help you is the 31 complete lesson plans, with 31 complete lessons which can start to build your lesson plans. It can start to give your lesson structure. It will give you examples of sharing the risk, etc. It will give you examples of the goals, etc. I'll post a link in the notes below for if you're interested, where you can come and find one of these and look at some of these products, things like the lesson planners, which again wrote according to the DVSA syllabus, etc., because I want you guys to make sure that when you get there in front of the examiner with your standards check or your part 3 check, you are telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Otherwise, I'll see you all next Monday. Various things will be posted during the week to help you. Have a great week teaching, and I really am looking forward to hearing how this has helped you. I'll speak to you all soon then.